Hello and welcome to another episode of Mystique Femininity. Today, we're going to get into a topic that I think has done many rounds on social media. And for myself personally, it's pretty cringe, but I can also understand and see the significance and the need, especially for women who are over 35, in their 40s, especially their 50s and beyond. High value has nothing to do with your look, who desires you, or how impressive your optic life appears from the outside. At 40, if you are still trying to measure your value based on those sorts of things, that's the reason why you're exhausted, babe. That is why you're tired. This episode is not going to be about how to become a high value woman as an identity or cosplay. This episode is going to get into how do you reset your internal standards that determine how you move, how you decide, what you tolerate, and just how you navigate the world. Because at this stage of your life, your problem really oftentimes is not because of a lack of knowledge. It's because your internal bar is 6 feet under. And when your internal standards are low, there is no amount of external success that will compensate for that. There were moments in my own life where nothing dramatic happened outwardly, but there has been some very deep internal shifts. And I really tried to push past those because it's not fun to really sit with yourself, really acknowledge yourself. A lot of the fear, a lot of the anxiety that we deal with when it comes to healing, to self development, self growth is due to the part of having to actually sit with ourselves. There were moments where I just could not keep engaging in the activities and the goals that I had at the level that I was doing. I most definitely could not be bothered with the certain people, with certain types of work. And even more importantly, I could not stomach my own self. Now, this wasn't something that was extremely loud, extremely brazen in how I felt it, but it was extremely gnawing on my heart and just my inability to have joy about my life. And then on one day, I came to a very deep realization that I really was going overboard in trying to articulate how I wanted to live, what my standards were, and why I was doing what I was doing. Often, as a woman, we do this emotional overfunctioning, and it's often because there's not the equal reciprocity that we deserve. So we're giving and doing and going overboard, yet we're not receiving a return on our investments energetically. And I oftentimes noticed that I would be negotiating my discomfort instead of actually calling the thing a thing and being able to move on. My standards internally were not pretty. And I had to really reconcile with the fact and the actual effort that it would take to raise my internal standard bar. So that way I could actually have a life that I wanted to have and not one that I wanted to just escape. Typically, when your internal bar is so low, you'll start to withdraw your energy from what you can no longer justify. But this justification is typically not something that you will recognize or that you would have language to explain why. It takes a lot of deep reflection and time to eventually get to the fact and notion that the way that I'm living doesn't meet my standards. And often the standards that you're operating through and with are actually not even yours. They are either from the world telling you what your standards should be, or some shiny social media influencer, someone on TikTok that you see that is portraying a life that you think you want, yet it's not at all aligned with what you truly desire. And sometimes the things that we desire sometimes are so not socially palatable that we will dissociate from it and keep ourselves numb. Now, when you just start to get into this area, you then can start to look at a lens of what is considered high value without contortion. Now, high value is a multi layered process. Being high value is not a personality trait, it is a state of truly embracing that you deserve all that's wonderful within the universe. It is allowing you to be very regulated. You're not always responding under pressure. You don't feel a need to. You are able to quickly correct yourself because there isn't this pressure to be perfect. It's you not abandoning yourself to be understood. How high value should come from a operating system from the inside out versus the outside in, which is how most women and people in general operate. But I'm speaking to the woman because we have such power in being able to pivot the narrative of our society and the collective. High value from the inside out means that you don't argue with your intuition. Don't intensify to feel alive. You're not doing random things just so that you can feel something. You don't confuse your attention with alignment. So just because you're putting a lot of time and effort, that doesn't mean that that really is what you want. Sometimes we enjoy the act of being busy, booked and busy. And in actuality, it's not getting us anywhere. So, yes, you're putting a lot of effort in, but you're not getting anything. Now, when we hit the intersection of being 40 and beyond, value is not about proving, it's really stopping and asking, how do I want to show up better? And it is also going a bit deeper about what no longer deserves access to me. Because, see, when something's valuable, we protect it at all cost. Countries have gone to war over things that they are protecting, things that they find with a significant high value. And how that plays out in your day to day means that you are protecting your essence, your time, your body, your energy. And therefore, you're really doing some deep snorkeling in who gets access to me? Who gets to access my mind? Who am I giving it to? Why am I giving this energy and access to those individuals? Am I receiving anything back? Is it really benefiting me? Am I seeing true benefit by engaging? If you're able to do that shift, then that shift alone, that can change your entire reality. Now, when we get into the emotional aspects of high value, when I look at a lot of the social media content surrounding it, there is a cosplay that's going on. But this action, this very contrite energy is playing on your emotions. There is an emotional standard that should be going in your life. And so when you hear this content, it definitely pulls at some emotional energy strings, which is done deliberately. But instead of being angry about it, you can take that and pull that inward and review your own emotional standards. Emotional standards are extremely necessary because this is where we are able to make pivots in our reality. Emotional standards are not boundaries that you need to announce. I'm of the belief system that what is, and there isn't a need to tell the world. So if grass is green, grass doesn't send a press release to state that it's green. It just is. And that's how you have to operate. So if you're high value and you look at yourself as high value, you're high value, period. So you will no longer have behaviors that you will participate in, such as engaging with people emotionally when someone is dysregulated and unwilling to self regulate. You are no longer going to be a person's punching bag, their emotional teddy bear. You will remove yourself from such behavior. Now, this is not to say that you are not able to be empathetic with individuals. I experienced something recently, and after learning a bit more about where some of the behavior came from, I was able to give a lot of grace and understanding on a very, very human level. However, that does not negate the experience I had, nor does it negate that if behavior was ever to occur again, that I would remove myself completely. This is how you operate from a being of standardization that is high. You're no longer chasing clarity from people who avoid responsibility. So, especially in intimate sections, men tell you what they are, women tell you who they are. And so you have to believe that. So, if their actions do not align, you move along with your dignity and grace. You don't continue conversations that require you to abandon your dignity to maintain peace. This can be applied to anything in your life, from your job to intimate relationships, platonic relationships, or just belief systems that you are holding that mean that I have to silence myself in order to maintain being within this group. Now, how you can notice and start to see your emotional standards rise, you'll start looking and feeling in your body. So your nervous system will begin to stabilize. Relationships will more than likely reorganize. And by reorganize, that could mean that they start to change themselves because you are acting in a certain way and now they have to react a certain way. This also could mean that those relationships could no longer exist. They could dissolve simply because of how you are now setting your standards. The standards that are internal are just a frequency. So now that you've pivoted your frequency, certain things cannot accept higher frequencies. And so they have to fall away. And then there are others that can raise the frequency, but that just hasn't been there yet. Your decision making will speed up rapidly because it will be pretty much a yes or no. It won't be this kind of wishy washy, well, let me think about it. Well, maybe there. No, it's either a yes or a no. Or it could be a maybe because I need more information, but not excessive amounts, just to gain the clarity that you need to make that precise choice. Because again, if you are valuable, if you have children, there are things that you will cut off in immediate fashion because that's your baby. And absolutely not. That is what you will have to do when it comes to yourself and raising your own internal standards to be in high value frequency. Now, you're not going to go about being your heart hardened because you're no longer confused. You know what feels good to you. You know what feels aligned with you. You will not be doing a lot of emotional labor. There will be reciprocity in your connections, and there will be more of an internal quietness. I almost like to look at it as a first snow falling. There is a certain level of just peace, serenity that comes when you begin to raise your emotional standards to the high value frequency. Now, you may want to get into a little bit more of the deeper about what energetic self respect actually looks like. It's nice and all to hear it from the higher levels, but how does this play out day to day? Energetic self respect isn't being aloof, it is not an arrogance. That is what you often see is, oh, I'm high value. I only wear twin sets and pearls. I'm high value. That, my dear, is not. That is cosplay. Being of a high value frequency also doesn't mean that you're detached. You're not cold. What it does look like is that you're able to pause before you start responding so that you're not in a reactive mode. You're letting people sit with their own discomfort. You're not going and being Captain Save a person from themselves. And you're also trusting that you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Really sit with that. You don't need to perform anymore because it's just what is. Energetic self respect is a presence, a frequency that communicates that I'm not available for your distortion, your games. And this deeply, I don't chase, I'm magnetic. Now, you don't need to withdraw dramatically because sometimes the girls do like drama, but we don't do that because we operate differently. You remain intact. When you're able to do this and it flows energetically, this is when you'll start to really integrate with your deep feminine essence because it's not about being soft. It's about being very grounded, very deeply grounded with the divine because the divine already says that you are everything because you are a reflection of the divine. So you are already everything that there is all at once. Your energy will change and people will feel that pretty quickly. So it's either going to make people draw to you or it will repel people from you. And whichever way it goes, just be grateful because you have now done a thing of changing you from the inside out. And you'll also be able to stop leaking everywhere. One of the harder things about why women especially are drawn to this high value conversation, this discourse, is because we don't feel great about ourselves. We are hemorrhaging energetically. But when you begin to really analyze yourself and begin to raise yourself from the inside out, you are able to then finally start healing in a way that is of your highest good. And that moves me into another area of integration, especially for my ladies who are 35 plus. Self worth at 40 is not about becoming something new. Now, it may feel new because of how you have operated over the last 40 years, but it is truly going back to almost like a manufacturing reset of who you are on a deep level. You are now becoming in a way that is less negotiable. Because look, at 40, there are certain things that I will tolerate. There are certain things I will not. I am able to be kind, not nice, and making sure that I take care of myself first in order to be able to be of support to others. You stop bargaining with parts of your life that consistently drain you. You stop explaining your standards that you now live by. It's just what is. You stop giving repeated access to what's already shown you how much it's going to cost. And it's costing you an arm and a leg, and it's not giving you anything. That's what high value is. It is quiet, it is soft, it is demure, but it's also very much unimpressed with the external and is very internally led. It is a very deep sovereignty over your life. And when something's sovereign, truly, it doesn't need to be dominant. It doesn't have to be on the defenses. It's very calm. It's very cool. very refreshing, very mindful. Now, as I wrap this up, if you're listening to this and you're recognizing where your internal bar has it's on the floor, I want you to hear this very clearly. You deserve to live in your highest frequency in this 3D reality. This is where you are be able to be at the most service to the collective and also to yourself so that you can experience some of the more higher frequency experiences that this world has to offer. I would love it if you would send this podcast, if you're listening to it and this really resonated with you, send this to a friend. Leave a comment if you're listening to on any of these platforms. Let me know what you thought. Share it in your group chats because I believe more women need to hear this message. And raising your internal standards, even if no one notices, it matters in the most deep, profound way, in the most profound manner, because this is also very contagious and it will help another woman be able to live her greatest. And until next time, make sure you're living your best life.